Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and today I'm going to be talking about a touchy and controversial subject within the Mythic Plus community, and that is affixes. Whose role are they to deal with, and what can you do to help? And I'm going to be making some statements here that some people might not like. Before we do get into it though, please do like, comment, subscribe. It goes such a long way to helping out the channel. I am making a push to do this full time. I know I've been upping the content lately on YouTube, but I would also like to be upping the Twitch content and Patreon content, which has definitely seen an uptick. But, you know, I want to do more stuff daily for you guys, for everyone. So if you guys can help support, that would be great. There is a Twitch link down below if you wish to watch me stream, and a Discord link if you want to just ask questions, be around a wonderful community full of great people. Come on by, check that out in the Discord, and the link's down below. Alright, so we are going to be covering the affixes here pretty much in their entirety, save the ones that literally do not fit in the how does XYZ role deal with it, tank, healer, DPS. If it's just something like quaking or volcanic, sidestep, spread a little bit, you know, don't be idiots. Kind of simple, right? So we're going to be leaving those types out of the way. But we are going to be talking about, definitely, we're going to start off with one of the most controversial ones, and that is explosives. Alright, so for those of you that don't know, in Mythic Plus, once you start reaching certain key levels, you get these things called affixes, which kind of have to alter the way that you pull around and deal with certain things, certain pulls, certain mobs, certain bosses, all of those fun things, and they change on a weekly basis, and there are 2 affixes every week on a rotational basis. And explosives is one that, whenever it comes up in the pug community, it's always, no, it's not my job to deal with it, no. And I'm tired of this mentality. So we're gonna state the obvious here, okay? If you've watched any sort of WoW content on Mythic Plus in the last 2-3 years, you're going to hear this repeatedly. Explosives is a healer affix. Just let the healers deal with it. And in an organized group, okay? In an organized group where people are playing incredibly well and everyone's good, it tends to fall on the healers more often than not. Correct. Because they're the ones that have the least amount of DPS to lose from dealing with it, and they tend to be able to kind of work around. But not everyone plays in organized groups. Not everyone is as good as all of those people currently timing, you know, in 25s, 26s, being some of the world first raiders, Mythic Plusers, some of the best tanks, healers, and DPS in the world. Guess what? For the 97% rest of us, we pug keys with people who aren't as good as them. Who I am not as good as them. Which means it falls on the group to deal with it, okay? Explosives is a group community effort. It is not just fall on the healers, let them deal with it, and blame them when things go awry. Especially not when you're playing with people who are trying to get their Keystone Master, when they're trying to get their Keystone Hero. This is really a group effort. And while I will say the healer should have the larger chunk of them, because they do tend to spawn in waves, so when one comes up, a healer can just quite easily just use a global, get it done, and out of the way. But then there's certain problems that come up. You may double or do a triple pull, and there's going to be a lot more affixes, but when you do those sorts of pulls, there's also a lot more healing requirements. So putting a double strain on the healer from those pulls, and then blaming them for when things go bad, when that's already a tough pull to begin with, is monumentally stupid. Okay? Is absolutely ridiculously stupid. And then there's also how explosives works. So the way it works is when there's a mob around, they may spawn an explosive, and they tend to come in waves. But if you group stun them, use something like Blinding Sleet, Shadow Fury, Shockwave, whatever group stun that you have available, they don't spawn explosives when they're stunned. But it resets the cooldown on them, so when the stun wears off and you suddenly see 5 explosives pop up, the healer cannot deal with healing requirements and all 5 explosives at the same time on the same timer. And to say so and blame them for that is pretty stupid. Like, that to me blows my mind, where if everyone just makes a communal effort to try to get an explosive, and there are some classes and specs that have a much harder time to deal with it. 100% I agree. Without a doubt. There are some ones that have a hard time, but isn't it easier to maybe waste a global and lose some damage to not die, and then do more damage because you're alive, because an explosive didn't go off? I don't know, just a thought. There was a little bit of a rage on the stream last night when we were in a 16 Azure Vaults. It was something else. But explosives, honestly, like, require very little effort. An auto attack from a tank deals with it. You know, Frost Shock for shamans, Moonfire for druids. Every class has like one ability they can press that will just completely global and explosive and make the problem and make it not a problem. And guess what? If you're losing DPS because of it, it's better to have a cleaner run than it is to have wipes because no one wants to get explosives. So I would like, we've gone on explosives quite a bit here, but this is probably the worst offender. While in organized groups, like I said earlier, yeah, it tends to fall on the healers and their role to do explosives a little bit more than most. But if you are pugging, you live in the pug world, absolutely don't say it's a healer job. It's an everyone job. Next is Sanguine. Now, Sanguine is primarily tank focused because you need to be kiting the mobs. And Sanguine, what it does is when an enemy dies, they drop a pool of blood that heals the mobs and damages you, and you don't want mobs stuck in that. You really, really don't. So it's your job to kite as the tank, to start kiting as mobs are dying. So that when they're at that 6-10% mark, start bringing them out, depending on the key level and how fast people are, you know, blowing CDs and are doing crazy damage. You want to start moving them. But the DPS and the healers can help by using movement displacement effects. Typhoons, Ring of Pieces, you know, Fears, whatever you got can help move things away. And if a mob is about to die and they're a pretty quick one, you can use a stun to keep them in place for the last 2-3% while they bleed out, while the tank kites more. DPS and healers that do this, I definitely see so many more cleaner runs when the DPS and the healers use those sorts of abilities versus when they just leave it entirely to the tank. Raging. Raging is an affix that when a mob reaches 30%, they gain a damage buff, and it's unpleasant, really. It's really difficult against the tanks. It's difficult against the healers as well. Soothes can easily deal with this as well, so Trank Shot on hunters. This is important to take on Raging weeks. Take your Trank Shot. Druids take your Soothes. Rogues can deal with it with Shiv. And though, especially there's certain prio mobs that you do not want allowing to be like enraged for a long period of time. So using those abilities is very, very important. That tends to fall on everyone who has those abilities. But you know, if you're one of those specs that has access to a Soothe, you should be using it on those weeks. Bolstering. Bolstering, while this is up to tanks to manage the pull sizes and how things work, this is actually a lot more of a DPS affix than any of them will care to admit. Because bolstering becomes a lot easier when everything dies at the same time. But the problem with that is you don't want a blanket AoE to bring everything down evenly because enemies have different hell HP bars, right? And bigger priority mobs should be kind of focused down first until they're even, so everything dies. This is up to the DPS to kind of manage health bars and manage their cooldowns on who they're attacking and where they're going. So a big angry mob that gets bolstered 2, 3, 4 times over isn't going to just one-shot your tank, who really doesn't have much control, because some of those mobs are in single pulls, right? They literally, they're just in a single pull. You have to do it. You don't have a choice. You have to get through it. And the DPS can help so much by just making sure that everything dies at the exact same time. Up next, we're going to talk about storming. Storming is a little bit less impactful, but can cause a lot of problems. tanks, it's generally good that you take a storming, so a storming summons a tornado and shoots you up in the air, when things are safe. When you know you're safe, like, you know, Death Knights, you don't want to be away from a Death Strike that you know you desperately need. Croth can be pretty nasty with storming, given how many ground effects there are, with the fire swirls, with the frontal, with thundering going off. There's a lot of different things that can happen there that aren't fun, and there are many other bosses like that as well. But if you are safe to eat a storming tank, you should definitely eat the storming, so that way it doesn't affect your DPS and the bosses die a lot quicker. Grievous. Grievous is primarily a healer affix because it does require healing. Having multiple stacks of Grievous, which, by the way, let's read this. You get bleed for physical damage every 3 seconds. Injured players suffer increasing damage over time until healed. So once you reach a certain level of health, it goes away. I think it's like 90-95% where you get rid of your last Grievous stack. DPS and tanks that have any sort of off healing, very important that you try and spec into those to help out, because the last thing you want is Grievous stacks piling up, staying for a long period of time, draining your healer's mana more than it should, when you could have simply maybe put a regrowth on something, a vivify, a flash of light, whatever you have that can help increase players' health. Get those HP bars up and get those Grievous stacks off, especially towards the end of a pull. Like once there's like one mob left and your healer's kind of, you know, maybe a little bit more drained on mana, start throwing out some heals and helping out with the Grievous stacks. You're actually going to notice the run go a lot more smoother that way, and your healer asks to drink a lot less. A lot less. Which leads us into bursting. Alright, bursting is definitely a fun one. When non-enemy players explode, causing all players to suffer damage over 4 seconds, this affects stacks. Bursting is pretty much the opposite of bolstering as for how DPS manage this. Now, tanks, like bolstering, you have to manage your pulls and pull sizes to be able to, you know, deal with bursting, because you don't want 9 mobs dying at the exact same time, giving you 9 stacks of bursting. There's a very good chance you're gonna die. Very good chance. But this is where the DPS actually want to start prioritizing kill counts very early. So instead of having the big prio mob being focused down to kill with everyone else like with bursting, you want to try to get the little guys out of the way, get a few stacks rolling, let them drop, and then get more kills. And so often in pug groups and DPS, I see people that have 4-5 stacks of bursting still going ham on a mob that is about to die, and they need to stop pressing buttons to let bursting wear off. And then right at that 0.1, 0.2 seconds left, it's almost about to drop, the mob dies, refreshes for 6 stacks, and kills a bunch of people. That's on the DPS. That's not the healer's fault. Okay? That is straight up not the healer's fault. It is up to the DPS to help manage bursting by how you kill things. And this is where you always like having a kill, little break, kill, little break, kill, little break. However you pull these things, you can still pull big around bursting, but it's not, it's literally about the order in which things die and knowing when to not press your buttons as a DPS or even a tank that's doing high damage and allow the bursting stack to get off and then get your kill. And this is going to help your healers out tremendously, and when you do this right, they love you for it, because the last thing you want is deaths piling up because people only want to look at their overall, which is an incredibly stupid mentality to have. Spiteful. Spiteful is like the one affix that I really, really like as a tank because it doesn't bother me at all. It's the one where like I just don't have to do anything. But you should be. And an ethical tank is going to save some sort of stun, some sort of displacement, anything you have towards the end of a pull, especially those long stuns. I love having Hodge for Paladins, Hammer of Justice, 6-second stun on a Spiteful that's on a melee DPS is huge for allowing them to remain in combat and make the pulls just go quicker. Ring of Peace is amazing for Spitefuls and keeping them away from ranged. anything that you can do to help your melee DPS stay in melee longer to do more damage and make the pulls go quicker is going to give you a much cleaner run and a much quicker run, because as you know, Mythic Plus, we're up against a timer. We want to get this done. We want to get this done within timer, because we all, you know, it's not fun depleting a key. It's a lot more fun crushing a key, right? It's a whole lot more fun timing it. And the things that you can do here is, you know, help your melee DPS out, help your ranged DPS out with stuns and displacements and effects. Anything that you can do to keep Spitefuls away from your players, from your friends, is very, very important. You can kite mobs away. You know, you can start cutting mobs away from Spiteful, but this can get tricky because, you know, things people can get out of healer range, out of DPS range, and, you know, Spiteful's just like to follow along anyway. So try to use what you can, and stuns and CCs are really, really good for Spitefuls. Aside from that, that's what I got for you guys today. These are just the affixes that come along. We're not going to be talking about the seasonal today or anything like that. Tyrannical Fortified is just something that we all have to deal with. But the big one there, like I said, was Explosive. And just to let you guys know and show you that just because an affix is primarily dealt with by a certain role, a tank, a healer, or whatever, or DPS with Spiteful or whatever, that doesn't mean it's only their job to deal with. And this is a group game, or group content. Mythic Plus is group content. There's 4 other people with you, no matter what you do. I mean, you can go in and solo an entire Mythic Plus run if you want. Have fun doing that. But most people just, you know, go with 4 other people, a tank, healer, and 3 DPS, and go in and crush a key. And the idea that, oh, it's not my job. No, it's not. It's everyone's job. If there is a way for you to help deal with an affix to make someone's life easier, that's just a better pug environment to be in. It's just a better run to be in. It's a cleaner, more fun dungeon to be in than people dying and blaming one another when you easily had a global to deal with an explosive, when you easily had a stun to deal with a Spiteful, when, you know, you could have just stopped DPS for 0.5 seconds and not used a big Chaos Bolt or a big aim shot to kill the mob so your overall looks better, killing 3 people in the process on bursting. Do you see what I'm saying here? This is a much larger issue, and I do expect this video to get shit on quite a bit in the comments. But I stand by what I say here. I absolutely stand by what I say, and I think this can, you know, if we can help shift people's mentalities over, it's not my job, to being more team players, that's all the better, especially so in pugs. Because the big thing here is there is a difference in play between the people timing 25s and the people just trying to get Keystone Master. These 2 groups aren't even playing the same fucking game. And we need to be a lot more mindful and helpful in those pug 15s or the pug 20s that we do than just try and copy what everyone in those 25s are doing. Because I don't know about you, but when I watch them and then I go pug at 15, all 3 of my DPS aren't doing 150k overall. Very rarely. It's not on the DPS, it's just on the skill gap. That's all it is. But I hope this video has helped you. I hope this was informative, and I hope that you learned something here. So aside from that, I hope you guys have yourself a great one, and happy tanking, everyone.